Today we're going to talk about the guitar. You see it everywhere, right? But the story of how it got here, how it's constantly changed to fit the music of the times, well, that's an incredible journey. From ancient palaces to massive stadiums.
So that brings up the big question, doesn't it? How on earth did this quiet, unassuming wooden box become this global symbol for everything from quiet personal artistry to full-blown rock and roll rebellion? Let's dig in.
To get our answer, we have to go way back. I'm talking long before electric guitars, long before rock and roll. The very first seeds of the guitar story were planted in the ancient world. You know, the guitar's family tree is surprisingly huge and diverse. You've got ancestors like Mesopotamian lutes from 3500 BCE, the Greek Kythera, but the really critical moment comes when the Moorish oud arrives in Spain around 711 AD. That cultural melting pot is what led to the vihuela in the 15th century, and that was a huge step toward the guitar we know today.
And this is where we see a major fork in the road. See, most of Europe was all about the lute, with its round, pear-shaped back. But in Spain, they developed the vihuela. And look at that, it has a flat back and that iconic figure-8 or hourglass body. That shape right there became the fundamental blueprint for pretty much every guitar that came after.
So the shape is there, but the guitar was still kind of quiet. Its voice was just a little too delicate. The next massive leap forward came from a Spanish master craftsman who would finally give the instrument its powerful modern voice.
And that man was Antonio de Torres Jurado. He was a luthier, that's just a fancy word for someone who makes stringed instruments, and he is widely considered the most important figure in the history of the classical guitar. Why? Because he created the basic design that even today, almost all modern acoustic guitars are based on.
So what was his secret sauce? Well, it was really a combination of three brilliant innovations. First, he made the body bigger. Then he made the soundboard, the top piece of wood, much thinner so it could vibrate more freely. And finally, he perfected a system of internal supports called fan bracing to hold that delicate top together. The result? A guitar that was way louder, richer, and just sang with resonance.
Now get this. To prove his theory that the top of the guitar was the real source of its sound, Torres did this legendary experiment back in 1862. He built a guitar where the back and the sides were made of papier-mâché. And you know what? It still sounded absolutely incredible. He proved his point. The soundboard was the key.
But his true genius wasn't just in the engineering. When people asked him for his secret, he said it wasn't something you could just write down in a blueprint. He said it was the intuitive feel in his fingertips. His real secret weapon was that perfect mix of science and pure, unteachable artistry.
Okay, so as we head into the 20th century, the guitar story crosses the Atlantic and lands in America. And here, a totally new culture with louder, rowdier music needed an even bigger, more powerful instrument.
See, those beautiful guitars that Torres designed were perfect for a quiet concert hall. But on a loud American stage? No way. They were just completely buried by booming banjos, screaming fiddles, and singers belting it out. The guitar desperately needed more firepower.
The answer came in 1916 from C.F. Martin and Company. It was called the Dreadnought. This thing was a beast, big, broad, with these square shoulders. And they named it after the most powerful class of battleship in the world at the time. The message could not have been clearer. This guitar was built for raw power. And the Dreadnought quickly became the absolute sound of American music, especially with these two models. You had the D18, made with mahogany, which had this bright, punchy tone that could slice right through a busy band. And then you have the D28, made from rosewood, which gave you this deep bass and rich, complex sound, perfect for backing up a singer. These two sounds really became the backbone of folk, country, and bluegrass.
But you know what? Even the mighty Dreadnought wasn't loud enough for the booming big bands and dance halls. And this constant chase for more and more volume led to the next big hurdle, amplification. And that created a whole new screaming, howling problem of its own.
And here's the crazy paradox. The very thing that makes an acoustic guitar sound so beautiful, that resonant, hollow body, it became a total nightmare when you try to amplify it. The body would vibrate along with the speaker, creating this awful, uncontrollable feedback squeal. So the solution had to be totally radical. What if the guitar didn't resonate at all?
The answer looked like this. It was nicknamed the frying pan. Developed way back in 1931, this was the first electric guitar that was actually a commercial success. And it was basically a solid hunk of cast aluminum.
No sound chamber, no acoustic properties, nothing. And because of that, it completely solved the feedback problem.
The magic here was the magnetic pickup. You see these big horseshoe magnets? They would sense the vibrations of the steel strings and turn them straight into an electrical signal. For the first time ever, the sound of the guitar was coming from electromagnetism, not from air vibrating inside a box. I mean, this just changed everything.
All right, so with the blueprints for both the acoustic and electric guitar pretty much set in America, our story takes a big jump forward to the 1970s. And this is where a new wave of guitar makers in Japan started to give the American giants a real run for their money, first by copying them, and then by out-innovating them.
So, in the 70s, those iconic American guitars were amazing, but man, were they expensive. Companies in Japan like Ibanez and Tokai saw a huge opportunity. They started making these incredibly high-quality replicas for a fraction of the price.
And these copies were so good, so accurate, that they even copied Gibson's trademarked open book headstock design almost perfectly. When you combine that with the huge price difference, well, you can see why it was headed for a courtroom. In 1977, Gibson's parent company finally filed a lawsuit against the American distributor for Ibanez. But the lawsuit had this completely unexpected result. Instead of killing off the Japanese competition, it actually forced them to get creative. Since they couldn't make direct copies anymore, brands like Ibanez pivoted. They started creating their own original, innovative designs and became leaders in the kind of high-performance guitars that would define the sound of music for the next decade. So when you think about it, from those ancient lutes to the modern electric guitars of today, the story of this instrument is a 5,500-year journey of nonstop evolution. It's really a history defined by a series of musical problems that were met with absolutely brilliant, innovative solutions.
The guitar has never really been one single thing. It's always been a mirror reflecting the music of its time. And that just leaves us with one last big question. What is the music of the future going to sound like? And how is this incredible instrument going to evolve yet again to help create it?